All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Take two. Welcome to episode 176 of the KissFAQ Podcast. For a moment there, I didn't know who the hell I was or where I was or what show this was, and it seems to have been one of those weeks. Episode 176, Lonnie, St. Louis Kiss.
What's up?
Marcus Almighty, Mark.
Greetings.
And 69th Blizzard, Ken. Good gentlemen to see you again. Let's just do the news quickly. Tomorrow is April the 27th, which means happy birthday, the original, the one and only. He's a card, Ace Frehley. And apparently he's got a special announcement, so check out his website, his Twitter, or whatever.
Right.
Maybe it's him wishing himself a happy birthday. Who knows?
Perfect.
I'm just glad he's around to tweet.
Great.
There we go.
Yes.
Other news, I don't know. There's nothing really this week of interest. Nope, that's it. I did just read a comment on the FAQ message board, and no, it's not that one that everyone's been reading. That's another infamous one. It was one poster suggesting that Vinnie Vincent is overexposing himself at this point with all these shows that he's appearing on. He was in on an Australian podcast this morning. He's been on the fantastic Talking Metal. Good job to Mark and the team there. Obviously, he's been on Decibel Geek. He's been on, has he called into the Kiss Room yet? No, but I'm sure he will. And of course, the guys from Three Sides of the Coins did a great Q&A with him at the Spooky. So just a yes, no, maybe. What are your thoughts, Ken? Is he overexposing himself, or after 30 years or 20 years, no amount of too much is too much? Because take it while you can.
Expose us in the wrong way.
As long as he doesn't go the full Bill Cosby.
I don't want to. If he comes out in a trench coat, I'm putting the blinders on. But yeah, as for exposing, I don't know. He's been gone for so long. I think he's just excited to be back and wants to get out there. It sounds like he really wants to, get out there and meet the fans and sell some stuff and hopefully, he says he's going to, do some new music or release some music. So as of this point, I don't think it's overexposing. I think it's just excitement.
Agreed. Mark?
I don't think so. I think that he's, like you said, he's been in the shadows for so long. Now he kind of seems to want to make up for it and, get exposed on as many different shows as possible. And I think he'll continue to do that. So.
There's a lot of meat on the carcass of Vinny's career to talk about on different shows. No one show's going to cover everything that everyone wants to know. It's going to take a book by Vinny, and maybe these interviews are going to help him get some of his thoughts in order. He seems to be coming across very well in them, but there is so much that I think the fans want to know about him. He's a bit of an enigma. I can't speak today. I'm doomed. I haven't listened to any of them. I got to catch up with it. And Lonnie, what are your thoughts? Overexposed, not exposed enough?
Absolutely not overexposed. I think it's fantastic that Vinny's out there and doing these things. I mean, a year ago this time, I would have, done just about anything for anything Vinny related because we haven't heard from him in so long. So I think all this Vinny exposure is fantastic. I can't get enough of it. I can't listen to enough Vinnie Vincent interviews. I mean, we haven't had one in 20 years, so I think it's great. I'm enjoying every minute of it, and I can't get enough of it. So, absolutely not. No such thing as overexposure. This is Kiss we're talking about. Overexposure?
What's that?
Are you freaking kidding me?
and he did mention.
It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, actually, to be honest with you.
He did mention in a few episodes of some of these podcasts that he is working on a book now. So there's your answer to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, the KissFAQ panel says, no, he is not overexposed. Keep it coming. Vinny, we want to hear more about you, your life, your career, your work, and hopefully at some point I'll get the opportunity to talk to you. Okay,
Yeah.
Today I want to start a little new micro feature at the beginning of every episode. It's where we get Ken. You came up with KissFAQ, your Kiss experiences for the week. See, not a good one.
You better trademark that. Now.
Not a good one when I can't speak to
right.
even try and say. But it's pick one or a couple of things that you've listened to or watched or purchased or obtained in the past week. Give us their context, just a little week to week as a Kiss fan. I'm going to get started with I had a couple of things lined up for this. Number one, I was sitting in my car yesterday. I'm like, I really want to listen to Badlands. So I went on I've usually got a USB loaded in there. And you know what? I did not have it in my car. I was bummed out. I didn't have any Ramones either, which I got to fix that. So came home today, ripped that. It's going on my USB stick that lives in my car. Still to this day, I didn't know who Eric Singer really was in 1989. I was just beginning to kind of discover, obviously I was a fan of Ray and Jake E. Lee, which is why I got into Badlands and knew that album was coming because the amount of hype in the metal magazines. That album, I mean, after listening to it in Dusk today, it still stands the test of time very, very, very well. And I can't wait to have that back in the car. Another thing from the week was... I'm still working on Kiss's touring history. That's a never-ending job, a life, a calling. I'm sure it's the same with Jeff and Kurt, that they are always looking for new information. Well, same with me. And I was reading some old interviews. I posted one of them up on the FAQ and on Facebook this week, and it had some great stuff. They're loud and stupid, which admits them to a very broad category. And just because 8,000 morons go politely and harmlessly berserk whenever an overdressed clown shouts rock and roll through an overloud PA does not mean that the thing is taking place. And if it does, then an inquest is long overdue. That reviewer in Britain's NME was the September the 9th show, 1980, at Wembley, and he was brutal. He got Paul mixed up with Ace, so he's disrespecting Ace all through this review. He's getting his facts wrong. He's accusing Paul of ingratiating himself to the audience by saying, England, I hope you kick Finland's ass tomorrow. Well, number one, Paul clearly says on the recording, Norway, who they were playing the next day as part of the 1982 World Cup qualifyings, they won 4-0. So, he got a whole bunch of shit wrong. He insulted fans, he insulted Kiss, but the best part comes at the end of the review. It says, the mind can only boggle at how much more successful they'd be if they all woke up to that they're a pantomime act. Exploited it mercilessly and stopped pretending to be a rock band. Even if it is only for the benefit of their audience, which surprisingly it isn't. Egos are at stake. And there's the key part at the end. The classic 1980 bootleg, Egos at Stake. There's where your title comes from. I was glad to finally get a copy of the review to, actually have in print what I knew had been said about that. So I listened to that bootleg because obviously I wanted to go and fact check what Paul was saying to make sure that it matched up with, what's in the review. So great show. One of the best from that tour. I've got one more thing afterwards. Ken, let's go to you.
Okay. Well, of course, I recently, like everyone else, had bought that, Destroyer, or many of us, I guess, some of us, the Destroyer red vinyl, but I'm not going to show that. Everyone's seen it all over the web and everything. But I decided to buy something that I haven't been collecting these or anything, but I decided to go ahead and get this one here.
I do want to get those.
The Gene Simmons, the Dynasty outfits, the figures toy company. Yeah, thanks. Let's see.
Julian's a big fan of the action figure.
The face.
Blocking it out.
And they made his face kind of like the cover of Dynasty. It's pretty cool. It has a cape and all. And I don't have all the series that came out. I don't have all the dolls. I mean, I had the original. I still have the original Mego dolls that I bought back in the late 70s. Plus, I got, I think, the first album series from the same company here. Just the first album. But I didn't buy anything else until I saw the Dynasty one. I thought, I'll go ahead and get the Gene one. And that's it. I'm just getting the Gene. So
I've never been into the action figures. I won a set. I believe it may have been Kiss Freaks back in 1998, right after I'd moved to the U.S. I was living with this Dutch lady, and she was like very direct, and she saw the box. She says, "What the hell is that crap?" in a very strong Dutch accent. And
holy crap.
I think I put them up on eBay very soon afterwards, but could not get rid of those, for now, like obviously mint in box. So, Mark.
Cool.
So that's it.
Well, so for me, basically, my big thing is collecting albums. Obviously, I haven't collected many of them for a while, but I got into that kind of, desire to pick up a few more. So I got 3 in just recently. So I got an Italian pressing of Lick It Up.
Oh, nice.
In. There's
the label. Yep.
Hey, that's damage. That's got writing on label.
And I got, and another thing is I've been starting to collect Sweden pressings from Sweden. They're not easy to find, but I was luckily able to find a Dynasty.
God, they're not easy. They're not easy to sell either. Holy shit! Came with that label.
Yeah. And the last one that I got, of course, I'm sure Julian will approve.
Alive?
Is I got
really?
a UK pressing of.
That's nice. I always like that label.
Yeah.
Where'd it go?
So
nice.
And right now I'm just really trying to nail down a couple of those countries because I have all my Canadian, all my US ones. So I want to try to get at least a full set of Italian and a full set of the Sweden ones. So it's getting there. The Sweden one's taking a little bit longer. I just found a Destroyer and I found I think it's a Dress to Kill. So I think that's what it was. But I know I have a Destroyer. I just got that in this one. So the hunt continues.
Nope, I've got a Swedish Alive if you're interested. I wasn't able to sell it in Indie. I haven't been able to sell it in Kiss My Wax. And that's with a really freaking good price point on it as well.
Fire.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let me know.
Driving me
there
insane.
You go.
All right, Lonnie, obviously, you're not at home, but any additions or interesting Kiss stories this week?
What I've been doing recently is when I go to the gym, I have been just selecting a random Kiss album to listen to. Most Kiss albums are about a half hour in length, so they work out really good for a 4-mile run or something like that, or 30 minutes on the elliptical or something of that nature before I switch things up. So, I'm not doing them like in any particular order or anything like that. It's just whatever I feel like listening to that day for 30 or so minutes. So I think Monday I listened to Psycho Circus from start to finish. And I couldn't tell you the last time I listened to Psycho Circus from start to finish. Correct. Yeah. Like, when's the last time I listened to Dreamin' or Raise Your Glasses, or You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best. I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time I listened to some of those songs. So it kept my interest the whole time. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're on the treadmill and you're like, oh my gosh, you're looking at the clock. I can't believe I still got this much longer to go. But it held my interest for the duration of it. And
motivational?
Well, yes and no. It was just different that, well, this is why I don't like this album so much sometimes, you know?
It's a reminder.
Oh, You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best. You know, we badmouth that song quite a bit. You know what? That really does sound like garbage. I really don't like that. It's not a myth. It's true. So it was enlightening to listen to it. But it does have its moments. I really do like the title track, and I listen to the title track. I have the title track on different playlists and things like that on my phone. And Into the Void is really good, and you can definitely hear the Peter Criss drumming on Into the Void versus the rest of the tracks on the album. And when I was 19 years old, I didn't want to believe that. But today I can listen to it with an open mind and say, and you can instantly hear it from I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll into the Void. that, boom, there's a different drummer playing on this track. You can definitely hear it. And I know Kevin Valentine did his best to imitate Peter Criss to make it sound like it was Peter Criss, but man, you can tell. And then on other songs, you can really tell, and then go back to listen to Into the Void, like, wow, there's something totally different about that song, and it's the drummer. Style. And you can't hide. You always say a band is only as good as its drummer, and I'm not saying good as in Peter Criss was bad at that point or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying you can definitely tell a difference in the drumming style from the rest of the songs on that album versus Into the Void. And just the song selection on there just still blows my mind with Dreamin', with You Wanted the Best, with I Finally Found My Way. It's still a letdown to me. And it gets a lot of heat on Kiss message boards. It gets a lot of heat on Facebook or Twitter or what have you. But the legend is true about Psycho Circus. It is not very good.
You know what? Come September and the 20th anniversary of that album.
I was thinking about that.
I think we have to do another. I know we've talked about it on an episode, but come on, our opinions, or at least my opinions, change from day to day. So I'm not consistent. I don't try to be. I just say things, that I feel in the moment. Yeah. It's all kind of stream of consciousness. So I like to go back and visit that, and maybe play it in the background while we talk about it, and maybe even try and get a guest on about it. So I had one other current Kiss thing, and that's just something that came in the mail. Of course, it came from Japan, so what's always nice about it is it says, "Do not bend." It's packaged in 18 layers of cardboard, and the USPS has smashed the fuck out of it with its automated...
It came with a big crease down the middle.
It's got a gouge in it that goes right to where the stuff goes. So I just got to
be with it during lunch.
Yeah, so this is just a bunch of Japanese flyers. I'm not going to open them up. You just see the ones that you can actually see. Where's the other one?
Nice.
Obviously, when I do the on-tour books, I can't afford to license photographs, so I'm stuck using stuff like that. So there's a bunch going back, I think, to 97 in there that I got. All right, let's get into today's topic, which, it's about 1978. We're in the 40th anniversary of that year, which was quite a year for Kiss when you think about, you start the year essentially with Double Platinum, end of the Alive 2 tour. Before that, Double Platinum comes out, then filming of Kiss Meets the Phantom, final recording of the solo albums, into the solo albums, and then into Dynasty demos. So was it their Swan Jesus, I should let Ken talk. Swan I can't even say it. Yeah, what about their, Kiss's decisions, releases, and activities, and how would you have changed 1978? So, let's start with you, Mark. What are the things about 1978 that you would change to make, now that we know that the movie was a dud, a killer, any chance of acting career, that the solo albums were essentially a failure, and they didn't stop the band from breaking up or fracturing. So fail, and they didn't tour and have any of that income coming in during the year.
Well, the thing is, what I find is that I think a lot of this stuff might have been looked at differently, or might have ended differently, if there wasn't just so much turmoil within the band. I mean, if those guys were getting along, like, a lot better than they were at that time period, and maybe making the movie would have been more enjoyable for them. Maybe they would have had fun doing it. Maybe it still would have sucked, but maybe at least they would have still, had a good time doing it at least, and not, running off the set at times and not being around for voiceovers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, if they would have been in a good mood, maybe that would have turned out better. And the solo records are the one thing that I think I would have changed. I mean, no matter how much I love those solo records, I think I would have probably tried everything in my power to make them not do that, because no matter what band I think about, whenever you give a band an opportunity to fragment and do things on their own, as soon as somebody does better than the other, then the wheels start going. You're like, well, wait a minute now. Does that mean that I'm the man who's behind this band? Am I the guy who's the, principal writer? You know what I mean? Then the gears start going, and it's never good for a band situation. That's why I always think that the best time to do solo records is when the band is done, like when the Beatles or something like that, when they were completely finished, then they started doing their solo records, and they started doing their big output of solo stuff. I think that's the best time to do it. I think that's the one thing I would have definitely changed, is not to have done the solo records.
Ken?
Well, part of the problem is they overexpose themselves, obviously, unlike Vinny, but they overexpose them. I think it's part of it's the record company's fault. Alcoin management and the whole bit, and the band. I think they all got full of themselves at that time, around there anyway. But as far as their production, I know the only song they recorded as a band, I think in '78, was Strutter 78, right? And they've been recording pretty regularly, like 2 albums a year before that. So the solo album deal, I agree with Mark. I would have had them not do the solo albums either. I would have had them take a long break, give them a long break, because they were burnt out. They were burnt out at this time. And they've been touring for years and nonstop. So I would have given them a long break, start writing songs, each of the guys, and then go in to record a new album. And I'm thinking a double album. Record a double album of new music. But give them all the time they need up until maybe, August, and they can start going back into the studio and record something. Now, as for the movie, come on. That was just to me, I think it must have been a cash grab. I don't know how much, you probably know how much they made, Julian, on that. But the deal is, they're not actors. Did anyone proofread the script? And we're talking, it's Hanna-Barbera. What are we doing? This is not, George Lucas didn't write this movie.
You don't know that.
Under a pseudonym, maybe. But that was just a big mistake. Right now, I enjoy watching the darn thing because it's funny at the same time. It's just interesting to see them on screen, and then the on stage parts, which are always the best parts of it.
The on stage parts. That's the only shit in there worth watching for me.
They should have just recorded a full movie of a show instead, maybe, and put that out. Why not? I know there was the HBO special that they had like the year before or whatever, but yeah, they could have done something like that. But again, the solo albums and the movie, no, just don't do it. Give them a long vacation. Give them time to refresh, recharge the batteries, and then start writing music, and then bring it all in and try to put an album or double album out, and have someone, maybe still Kramer, produce it, the record.
Yes,
that's where I would go.
I think one of the big problems with 1978 is that it's all defined in essentially December, was it 76, when they renegotiated their contract. I think they signed it in January 77, which defined the solo albums, which defined defined again the 2 album per year requirement. So once they get to Alive 2, they had already committed by June 77 to doing the solo albums and the comic books and all of kind of the merchandise. So it was like an inevitable rolling stone going down the other side of the mountain that they knew. They knew that they couldn't get a studio album out in time to meet the requirements of the contract. Therefore, double platinum happens with their blessing, obviously, because they did Strutter 78 on there. And then they're focusing on the touring cycle for Alive 2. They're touring, you look at the amount of dates that they did, it never really shows up being a complete slog on the road all through their career. It's never, I'd say 74 and 75 are the most overbearing years in terms of the number of shows that they played. After that, it's like little, had been analyzed for them early on in Glickman Marx. They really dialed it back into short spurts of touring. So,
well, quickly on your comment about the contract and I know the solo albums. Who is it? The record company that put that they want to to do the solo albums on there, or was it Kiss's management? A coin. Who puts that on there that you guys need to record 4 solo albums on the contract?
I don't know. I would assume, and that might be a good one for Kurt or Jeff
whose idea was it?
To kind of answer with some of the conversations that they've had with CK. It's not specifically about solo albums. You have to remember that it's the language in the contract. I can't remember if I uploaded copies of this contract on Facebook, is that it should solo albums be recorded, then those would only count as 2 members counting for 1 studio album. That was how it was defined. It wasn't defined that you are required to record 4 solo albums. It just said that should solo albums be recorded, that they wouldn't count as a whole album against the requirements of the contract, and that they'd only be seen as a 2-for-1. So, again, where does that come from? I don't know. To me, right. my way of thinking, that's almost that it comes from Casablanca's side, saying, well, because you're 4 very distinct characters. If Gene and Paul decide to do solos, we don't want that to count against the contract as 1. We're going to make sure that you have to have 2 of you doing 1 in case Peter decides he wants to do 1. Right. So from a business point of view is where it seems to come from for me. But again, I leave that open to interpretation. I would bet there are people who've had conversations about that know way more about me. Let's get to Lonnie. In 1978, what are your thoughts? Should it have happened or not? And how would you change it?
I think what happened was good, but I think that the movie is totally overexposure, and the movie gets laughed at, especially by non-Kiss fans. I mean, it's a cult classic among hardcore Kiss fans. But going back to what Ken said, I mean, did you really read the script? Did who told you guys that the 4 of you could act? And besides, but the acting beside the point. The Beatles movies aren't the most well acted scripts either. So, but did you really read the script? I mean, Paul talks in Kiss Extreme Close-Up that the movie was brought to us and it was a hard day's night meets Star Wars, and we were like, yeah, and it's like, okay, fine, but read the script. I mean, did you read it and go, no, this is not a hard day's night meets Star Wars? It's real easy, Paul or Gene or whoever, to sit there and bitch about the movie after it comes out. But did you take the time to read what we're actually going to do? Did you maybe in the process of making the movie say, hey, wait a minute, this sucks? What are we doing here? This is terrible. Pull the plug on it and let's go back to the drawing board. But instead you put out this product that some fans love it, some fans hate it. My wife won't sit through it at all. I made her sit through it once, and she goes, no, I will never again sit through that. That was awful. If I want to watch it, I have to pick a night that she goes out with her friends, if I'm going to watch that. But the movie's fine, but shouldn't someone be in charge behind the scenes, pulling the right lever, saying, you know what, no, this is wrong. We're not doing this. We're not going to put ourselves out there on national TV and look like fools.
Too many yes men.
Correct. And then in the meantime, you're putting out the solo albums, and I'm totally with Ken. I would have put out, and I guess you can't do this because of record contracts, like Julian brought up, but I would have waited until '79 and put out either a single album or possibly a double album. But I would have waited, and Kiss is good about waiting now and letting the demand rise back up. So because they were overexposed, maybe wait and let the demand rise back up, and then hit them with something big like a double studio album of 20 of the best songs that you could pluck off those studio albums, or maybe even pluck that was going to be intended for Dynasty. When we've all seen, like, what would you do with these 4 Kiss solo albums and make one great Kiss album? Well, maybe take those albums and even combine it with Dynasty and make one of the best Kiss albums ever in 1979 by waiting and getting cream of the crop material together. Yeah. Go ahead and do the movie, but you know what? Make the movie what it should have been and not just run through it and say, line, and someone feeds you a line and then that's a take. Maybe take a little more pride in what you're doing with the movie and then wait and put out one of the best Kiss albums ever in 79. And again, like Ken said, have it produced by Eddie Kramer.
You know, that's
for Mark's sake, Bob Ezrin.
Great. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
Fantastic idea.
Thank you.
But I think the problem is that at that time they were in that bubble that musicians get into where everybody's patting them on the back and saying, "That's right, baby. Everything's fantastic. You're a great actor, man. What are you talking about?" Like they don't have anybody saying to them that they suck or that this is terrible. If they did, maybe they would actually listen to it. But I think that they were at that point where they thought they could do no wrong. I think, and that's why all these things happened.
Yeah, I think Lonnie came up with a very good idea there that I don't recall anyone ever mentioning on this show before, that perhaps if they'd taken that year off, maybe done something, say film a concert, Kiss at Magic Mountain, and just have some cornball like scenes interspersed with the full live concerts filmed, especially on occasion, because the Japan stuff had only been HBO, and I think it was offered to somewhere else. But take the year off, just do that, and then go into 79 and have a double album. I love that idea. Imagine Kiss Dynasty, the double LP. Here's new 1979 recordings, and essentially the best of the solo albums on disc 2. Think of all the bands that have come back from a hiatus with a double album. I'm thinking specifically Physical Graffiti for Zapp. Though obviously they had reasons for the delay in between. But they went back to some of their stuff from 72, 73, and I think even earlier on a couple of the tracks on Physical. And then there was all new stuff that had been written in the immediate run-up to the release of that in, 75. So what a great concept. There is Dynasty, such a grand title for Kiss, coming back in 79 after a year off, and you wouldn't have had the solo albums, you wouldn't have had the fiasco. But then again, when we get back to, I think what Mark said, Yes Men, I don't think as much Yes Men as Bill Aucoin by that time is focusing on so many other bands, trying to break them as part of AMI. Toby Bo, Angel Baby, whatever that song is, Piper, who else he's got on the roster? He's Virgin. They're trying to break them.
Squire?
Yeah, that was Piper. Was that Piper?
Yeah, that's Piper.
Yeah,
You're at Piper. You're right. Yeah.
So you've got AMI's really branching out and trying to expand. Bill's trying to expand as part of that because he's been managing Kiss in 73. The guys from Kiss are branching out. Gene Simmons has discovered Van Halen, and look what happens with them. Now he's working with Virgin. Paul Stanley, well, he's not doing as much. I mean, he's kind of biding his time in the background. He does do a little stuff with the Alessi brothers, and then eventually leading into 79 goes into New England. So they're both kind of broadening out. Ace and Peter, I don't think they're showing any propensity for work outside the band. Party, yeah, but maybe, maybe Peter should have just gone off and done a side project. But, again, we're just getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. But Dynasty, I fucking love that idea. Double album of Dynasty. That would have been kick-ass.
With the straitjackets and like they intended anyway. And I think they were originally going to call it Out of the Asylum or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's why they were going to use the straitjackets. And if they had the double album, they fold that open, and that's that one big picture of them all in the straitjackets right next to each other, like that poster, that they touched up.
Then Ted Nugent ruined it all by using a straitjacket. So.
Yeah, well, who cares if one more person uses a straitjacket? Alice Cooper used a straitjacket.
Alice Cooper done it before that.
He used before that, and he even used it on From the Inside. And
come on, if you're gonna steal from the best, right, Paul Stanley? You how many times have you said that?
Yeah, Kiss is good at doing that.
Eric Houdini did it,
Or if you're gonna steal, make it better. So what if Ted Nugent's used a straitjacket and do it cooler? Your Kiss, for God's sake. But what is the one biggest factor of 1978 that you would change? Would it be the solo albums? Would it be the movie? Which one of those is seen as more of a liability, or do you think is more of a liability that should be erased and reformatted, Ken?
Boy, which one's more of a liability? I'm gonna say I don't know. I'm gonna say the solo albums. The movie. Not everyone saw the movie. I guess mostly kids watched it. I'm thinking, though I watched it when it was when they aired it, but I wasn't a kid. I was whatever, maybe 16, 17, whatever. But the solo albums. I think part of the problem with the solo albums, and we didn't mention it here too, is we all know that they overshipped the darn things, and they should have produced a lot less, and it wouldn't have been such they call a failure because they were companies were shipping records back to them because they couldn't sell them. So maybe 250,000 each record. Press 250 of each of them, so you got 1 million going out instead of whatever it was, 2 million. I don't know.
$1 million and a bit each, I think.
It was a lot, but so I think that would have helped. Again, it was a big change right there because you're starting to see the different sides of each member's music. I think another thing that divided them then right after that was because Ace's album turned out maybe not selling the best, but getting the most acclaim and having the big hit record on it.
Lonnie, how about you?
I'm going to go with the solo albums also because, I would rework the movie and I would get rid of the solo albums. I think the solo albums were a bigger mistake than the movie. I think it was too much overexposure. You put out basically more or less 40 songs in one day from Kiss. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? More or less 40. I don't know the exact numbers. I'm sure Julian does. He's probably corrected me in his mind already. but I just think it's too much Kiss if there's such a thing in the public side to put out that many. I know it's never been done before for a band to put out, 4 solo albums on the same day by all the original members of the band. It's a great achievement. It's a great accomplishment. No one else did it prior. No one else has done it since. Maybe there's a reason why no one else has done that move.
Exactly.
Because it's too much. It's overexposure. I think I would rework the movie and eliminate the solo albums. And don't get me wrong. I'm not here to bash the solo albums. I think Ace's solo album is fantastic. I think Paul Stanley's solo album is one of the greatest albums I own in my entire collection. But I think it was too much. In the comic book where it says, "Oops, I think I overdid it." That's exactly what it is.
Right.
Is I think we overdid. I think they overdid it. At that point, it was just way too much, and the overshipment of them, like you said too, Ken. They shipped all 4 of them like they were all 4 Kiss albums, and all 4 of these are going to sell just as much as Rock and Roll Over did, and just as much as Love Gun did. Well, you know what? A 12-year-old kid doesn't have money to go buy 4 Kiss albums at the same time. He's lucky he mowed enough lawns that he can go buy 1, not all 4 at the same time. That's just not the way the world works as far as your fans go. And Kiss's fans were getting younger at that point. So I think the 12-year-old kid mowing grass is a good example because their fans were getting younger at that point.
And he doesn't sorry, it would have been a 10-year-old fan by that time.
You're exactly so. Even more my point then. He doesn't have the money to go buy 4 albums at once. He doesn't have the allowance money or the grass money to go buy 4 albums at the same time on the same. It's just not there.
I didn't.
See?
Bought 2 at a time, so yeah.
Correct. It just wasn't there. So who did you buy the day it came out?
The first 2 I bought were Gene and Paul's.
See? That's perfect.
Imagine if someone bought just 1 and they bought maybe Peter's first.
Nah.
And then they would have thought, oh crap. A wrestler like this, and then maybe they don't even try. Well, they don't even go back and like, oh shoot, Are the rest going to be like this? Maybe I won't even go, attempt to buy Paul's or Ace's or whatever. I mean, that could have been a drawback right there. I don't know.
They should have done what they did with Led Zeppelin's In Through the Outdoor. Put it in a paper bag so you didn't know which one you were getting.
I'm really keep buying the same one.
I'm buying a pack of baseball cards or something.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been like that. I mean, staggered the releases, one each week, and they're all in paper bags, and you just don't know. There might be something on the back cover that kind of indicates. So you keep buying Paul Stanley's until you get a Peter Criss.
Like buying a pack of baseball cards. I got
that way. There you go.
I got 3 Barry Bonds. Can't get a Ken Griffey Jr.
But I think something that Ken and Lonnie both touched on is the record industry dynamic. That Casablanca and Neil Bogart, I mean, he's the biggest liability to Kiss in 1978, probably selling them the line instead of shipping 800,000 copies of each. No, we're going to do 1 million. No, we're going to go 1.25 each. I mean, he was the master of his own downfall in that sense. There was something I was reading this week online, and if you Google the history of Trigger by Derek Remington, and that's Derek. Trigger was another one of these rock bands signed to Casablanca at a time that they'd already become, very much the disco label. So having hard rock acts, I mean, I think there was Stallion, The Gods came in through Millennium, one of the subsidiary labels. I managed to actually say that word. Angel was continuing to not do a whole hell of a lot. Trigger comes in 1978, and again, Gene Simmons is thanked on the back of the album simply for being a proponent of saying, yeah, sign them, they're a good band. He didn't discover them or nothing. They actually had made a record beforehand. But Derek does a week it's 48 pages of an old online forum, and he just chimes in every few days, going back to 2013 or something, on the history of that band, how they got signed to Casablanca, and then more importantly, for the context of what we're talking about here, many of the issues that were affecting Casablanca at the time as a business. Larry Harris has done a great job in his book. I think Kiss and Sell does a pretty good job, but this tells it from an artist's point of view of what it was like to be signed to Casablanca. And Casablanca had become such a bloated, kind of single-focus entity that they were only able to focus on one thing at a time. So by the time the Trigger album is released, 78, it's like pushed out of the way in favor of Studio 54 album, and then allowed to die. But he also talks about Casablanca falling apart internally. And that's the immediate aftermath of the release of the solo albums and the impact that it had on the record label. So just after reading that this week, I mean, beforehand, I would have said, when we started considering this sort of topic, I would totally have said the movie, because they're a highly visual band, and suddenly to show them in such a cornball method on TV really kind of reinforced to the masses that they had gone from cool to kind of your 7-year-old brother's cool. So you'd lost your teens, and you'd had to have your tweens and younger, which is no way for success. But once I read the Trigger stuff, I started thinking, well, yeah, we know about the damage the solo albums did to Casablanca as a record label, and here's a band talking about exactly how it collapsed, and in the aftermath, Kiss is looking to even leave the label, and we know from everything that's been in the other books, about Polygram's involvement in the label and buying in, and again, it all comes back to the damage that shipping 1.25 million of each album does. So that's the one thing I would change. I totally agree with Lonnie and Ken. Mark, I didn't let you answer that before I went on a monologue. Sorry.
That's okay. Basically, my answer is the same that I had before, which is I think it's the solo records. I think that, in my opinion, the movie did, minimal damage to them. I think that's one of those things that they all kind of collectively could have agreed and said, yeah, that was maybe an error, and could have just brushed it off with a little bit of time and just moved on forward from it. But I think just the solo albums just did so much damage in so many ways, like you mentioned as well, like even within the record company itself, because once the record company gets in trouble like that, their confidence in the band now is being shaken as well, right? I mean, sure, maybe it's their fault for sending out so many copies of it and stuff. Like we said, if they would have sent out less, maybe it wouldn't have been so damaging. But, you know, now in their eyes, and don't forget too, I mean, a lot of these times when I was reading these books too, a lot of people were saying that these guys were, you know, flying by the seat of their pants at this record label. You know, they were doing like weekly orders of cocaine with, you know, within the office because that's how the lifestyle was. And everything was going crazy there. So, I mean, logical thoughts sometimes maybe went out the window and they just, you know, went with just pure, you know, off the cuff ideas. Like, this is a great idea. And, you know, after 2 or 3 lines, any idea is probably good at that point. Right?
It's a great idea. Give me another line.
Yeah.
Ideas are spewing out of me. Keep giving me
So
keep getting better.
but that's the thing. I mean, at that point, when the records start coming back, and their confidence is shaken now a bit about whether Kiss is gonna be able to, you know, keep them afloat even now. You know, it's those albums. You know, if they wouldn't have did those records, would that have happened?
3, 2, 1, and he's back. And he's gone.
You're freezing, Mark.
He knows he's freezing because we're laughing at it.
Say something, Mark.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. You're back.
Okay.
You had a little pause there.
Lost you about a minute ago.
Or more.
Okay. Where did I leave off at?
I don't know, because it was breaking up pretty badly.
Oh.
Don't remember.
It was only about 30 seconds, Mark.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think it's just the solo records just did it for them. I mean, if they would have just ditched those, everything would have been different. Because, like I said, I think the confidence in the band was shaken as well with the record label. That's another thing that I think happened with it.
Yeah, you know, when we always talk about, you know, the solo albums are a mistake, how if they'd taken the best of the material, I mean, it's very easy to say, I Can't Stop the Rain. I can totally see that as a Beth analog on a Kiss album. No problem whatsoever. Sure. You take the best of Ace's album, rip it out, Speeding Back, probably one other by that time. You take the best of Gene's and you go back and take another song from Ace's instead. You know, Paul Stanley's album. You know, it's so easy to focus in on the Kiss solo albums, and again, getting back to the damage that they did economically. But should the band have hit the road? I mean, regardless of what the interpersonal relationships were like, the drug issues, the injury issues, all the shopping issues, or the Hollywood issues. You know, once the solo albums are done, that's August 1978. They're released in September. The members do some appearances here and there, but not a whole hell of a lot of promotion effort by the band members. When you think about it, compared to the scale of advertising, was Casablanca's grand idea is that we're going to drop all this money on advertising, we're going to give Glickman Marks all this money for advertising. Well, what exactly was that advertising? Because I really don't see any record of it actually being that great in terms of promotion. Yeah, you printed up some assembled especially for radio promotional LPs. They made some very nice black box bullshit fake interview cassettes to send out so that every DJ could pretend they were interviewing the band. I mean, hell, they even gave them the questions to ask for the answers that were on the cassette. There is not that much promotional effort. Would it not have been better for the band, again, in a kind of best of the solos format, to have gone on the road? You put in Detroit Rock City, Rock and Roll All Night, and then you pick 2 or 3 from each of the albums and play them live and be back on the road in the fall. When did the Alive 2 tour kick off? That went off in November 77. So why not get them back on the road in October 78, supporting the solo albums and maintaining the visibility, unless they're completely incapable of doing so at that point. And
I think that's the answer. I think they were. I think they were incapable of doing it at that point. I think that they needed a break from one another, and that just goes back to my theory and Ken's as well of, you know, just take a break from Kiss, take a break from each other, and then let's reconvene in '79. I don't think that the four of them were kicking. In as much as the Dynasty tour was a mess, I think a tour in fall of '78 could have been an even bigger disaster, because I think that they were not getting along at all. Two of the members of the band wanted to quit the band, and I just think it could have been even worse, and maybe could have even spelled the end for Kiss if they would have toured at that point in time, because they just weren't getting along at all, and it could have been disastrous.
I would have loved to have seen it, though, just because, it's one of those what if things if they would have went out and tour on it. But I mean, I read in a book somewhere, I don't remember which book it was, but somebody said that putting the band out on the road sometimes was helpful, because they feared what would have happened to people like Ace if he had too much time off and left to his own devices, Yeah. And so who knows if we would have gave them a year, who knows, maybe Ace would have maybe not even be with us anymore, who knows, right? But I think that's one thing that I would have liked to have seen, to be honest. I would have liked to have seen them go back on the road with those songs and play them, because I mean, we only got to hear them play very limited songs from it on the Dynasty tour. So I would have liked to have heard some of those songs in a live capacity.
Yeah, it's interesting, idea, Julian. I mean, it's possible. Yeah, like you said, they did the solo albums. They said, well, now let's throw out a best of solo albums, which they did, of course, in other countries. They didn't do a best of solo albums in the United States, but to tour on that and call it the Kiss solo tour, solo album tour, or whatever, it would be kind of interesting and see what happened. But the problem is, if they did too many of the solo songs in concert, I mean, they would have to do a max of 2 per person, I guess, per member, which would be, whatever, 8, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, and I think egos could have really gotten in the way at that point too. Like, well, if Paul's going to do 3 off his solo album, I need 3 off my solo album. How come he's getting 3 and I'm only getting 2? I think egos could have really played a disastrous role in a tour like that.
Yeah, I think 2 songs from each one of those albums would have been totally workable. Look at Peter. I'm sorry, but on the Dynasty tour, Tossing and Turning works really, really well for my tastes. It's perfectly fine. It's a great rock and roll song. Peter's just done an interview recently where he talked about why that's on his album, which is really kind of neat to read. So Tossing and Turning, and then stick him up for his Beth spot and have him do I Can't Stop the Rain to pipe music right before he goes into Beth. That's his 2 taken care of. Ace, come on, New York Groove would definitely have been one, because it was the hit by that point. So you say, okay, Ace, pick another one. All right, what's it going to be? Rip It Out, Speeding Back. It's going to be one of those 2, more than likely. Paul is going to know immediately after Hold Me, Touch Me has made everyone throw up that they don't want to hear that live in concert, So he's going to probably pull one of the 3 out that he did in '89 and again in 2006. That's easy, take 2 of those. Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? And Tonight You Belong to Me. I think both of those would have worked very well with Kiss, whereas Hold Me, Touch Me, or actually he did Move On. Sorry. Move On. Bad choice again for what was done during Dynasty, so pick one of the a little bit more Kiss-like songs. Gene, therein lies the problem. Radioactive, without a doubt, maybe Man for a Thousand Faces. Certainly his more rocking songs rather than going into the eclectic.
Burning Up with Fever could have worked.
Burning Up with Fever is not bad.
Or shit, See You in Your Dreams.
You listen to those
Kiss song
demos,
to begin
they're better
with.
than...
Yeah, so I mean, there are options that kind of make sense. Best of the Solo albums as an album doesn't happen until November '79 anyway.
Australia,
Germany. Sorry,
Germany.
It came out. I believe it came out right around the time as the Sure Knows Something single, because there are like versions of the single back sleeve that only have Dynasty on it, and then the next printing has Best of the Solo albums advertised on it. But don't hold me to that as fact. So, it comes out in Australia, pretty much every market except the U.S. So, a year earlier, touring for that, and then having it as an album the following year kind of makes more sense. But, and again, this is just a what if. It's all basically bullshit anyway, because obviously they didn't It's just which one of these are bigger problems, or which do we think might have worked better? Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park 2. Devereaux's Revenge.
No.
Devereaux comes back as a robot to take his revenge on Kiss.
The clone. Attack of the Clone with Devereaux.
Yeah, I think in all the kind of research I've done for all these fucking books I've kind of compiled, I'm always stunned that when you think about the amount of effort that went into the solo albums, that maybe the budgets were all spent because the promotion of them really seems weak. The choice of singles sounds, seems insane. I mean, I understand maybe Paul wanting to put out Hold Me, Touch Me because it's a completely different side of him. It's unexpected. It's different. Is it different enough to really generate conversation, to a little bit of notoriety? No, because it really wasn't that good compared to everything else that was on the radio and the other Kiss singles.
You know what's funny, though? You kind of made an interesting point, though, because in the book, the C.K. Lent book, he does mention that Paul started at one studio and then stopped, said he didn't like it and bailed on it and went somewhere else and lost his deposit that they had on that place. So there's money flushed down the toilet. Gene Simmons is doing a record where he's flying in lots of people in that are guests. There's lots of extra money put in, right? Yeah. So it's true. Maybe they did, use up all that money, and maybe there wasn't as much for the promoting as we think there is. Because in that book, CK did, he lined it all out, how much everything was supposedly in dollars and cents, how much you're going to spend on each thing, right? So
we spent so much money on these solo albums. Let's press a whole bunch extra copies of them, so we'll get the money back, because they're going to get all bought up.
And of course you give the advertising budget to Glickman Marx. Come on, it was all a bit of a scam anyway. That was written into the contract to get them more money. Did that mean that $500,000 per album was going to be spent on advertising or whatever was defined in the contract? Are you fucking nuts? No. Totally not. It's like going into, where's my 20%, says the manager, or, and then Glickman Marx, where's my cut? All right, which means there's $49.95 left for advertising. Let's print up some calendars. So overshipping, not enough advertising, changing dynamic of the fan base into a younger that had to mow lots of lawns in order to afford their Kiss albums.
Julian, I can still remember to this day watching American Bandstand, Dick Clark, American Bandstand, they used to play on Saturday mornings, and they actually spun Radioactive on there. I couldn't believe my ears. I'll never forget that. I was like, wait a minute, they don't play Kiss first of all on there, really, and then to play Radioactive out of all this stuff, it's like, holy cow. So I don't know. I know Dick Clark was kind of a friend of the band.
He was a supporter.
He's always been a big supporter. Always was a supporter. But so I was like shocked. It was so out. How did they even? They couldn't dance to the darn thing.
Yeah, radio.
It's kind of fun. It's not a dance song.
It would have been the edit, so it wouldn't have that long.
I do remember that.
So they wouldn't have had the intro.
The long intro. Can you imagine all the stiffs trying to, how the hell do we dance to the intro?
You talked to the intro. I was just reading today, kind of, because I knew this was happening, but I guess they recut that single, right? I think the original single may have had the intro on it, but I heard I read that they recut without the intro for the regular single. I don't know if they did a second single or they were just trying to say that they just took it out of that period, the intro part. I don't know. I read something about that.
Are you saying there's a variation of the Radioactive single that has the full song?
This one sounded like it to me. It sounded like it the way I was reading it, but maybe
it never ceases to amaze
I was gonna look into it. And see.
Just like it's like The Elder. I mean, there are versions apparently. It's been verified now that copies of the original mix did get out in America.
I saw that.
We saw that on the.
I'm looking for that.
what's the Facebook group? Kiss My Wax. You know, you never would have known. I'd seen promos. I had seen label stock printed up for that because obviously some surfaced a few years ago when we were working on Odyssey. I saw those up on eBay, went after them. I never thought that it had actually gotten press. So who knows? I mean, Radioactive as the full song, cool shit. I mean, I just don't know how much of it I can trust these days because all this fake shit that's turning up, like fake first English singles, Australian singles being counterfeited. You haven't heard of it for 40 years, and all of a sudden you've got this stuff. It's now you become a little bit of a doubting Thomas about it. So kind of weird. All right, any last things about 1978 and what would you change? I mean, are there any other things that occurred in 1978 other than, say, the movie that...
Well, the only positive of 78, I think, is Double Platinum. It's still one of my favorite albums.
Yesterday was 40th anniversary yesterday.
Yeah,
I think.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, we did our episode a little early on that because I always think March 78 for that for some reason. But Double Platinum, I think is I would not change it. You know, they weren't going to make the time frame for the album, so for a studio release. So I wouldn't change a thing with Double Platinum, other than perhaps the intro to Rock Bottom. And having more Hotter Than Hell tracks on it, because those ones sound absolutely fantastic on that album. All right, any last thoughts before we call it a show, Mark?
No, I'm good.
Hey, I'm giving you an opportunity. What's up with Project Gemini?
Oh.
He's waiting for Julian to engrave it for him for the opportunity.
Well, I'm waiting.
We're waiting too.
Right at the perfect time.
We are waiting.
Every time this happens, you're paused again, Mark. I know you can't hear us, but you're frozen.
Now you're back.
Can we have take two on that, please? Start from the top.
Again,
take two on Project Gemini.
So I was going to say I'm waiting on a phone call from the pressing plant, and hopefully I'll be picking up the albums. Hopefully tomorrow. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. That's the main thing I'm waiting for. And right now I am tracking bass tracks. The bass tracks are being done now for the new record. I just finished the long, epic 13-minute song for the next record. That's done. So another 7-8 songs to do. And then, it's going good. Hopefully, I'm hoping that by June I'll have this next one ready to go. So, but right now I'm just mainly waiting for this vinyl to be done so I can get it out to everybody.
Oh, there it is.
Wow, he's a Mark Lemming.
Hey, I dig Mark's stuff. I hope he releases that song that he shared with me at some point in the future that you haven't played for everyone. I don't think it's been on any of your releases yet. What do I have going on? I just got a shipping notification. Hallelujah. 7 boxes, 150 pounds worth of books are on their way. I'm 1 day away from my drop dead date for Indy. And they've just shipped, which means they should hopefully get here in time for me to fucking ship them to Indianapolis, which is coming up. So we got our dealer table placements today for that expo. I'm going to be, hopefully it doesn't change, I'm going to be right next to the Ages of Rock guys, Alan Tate, Dennis Talbot, and God, I can't remember the last guy's name, Bill Algie. Yeah. I've hung with you guys before. It'll be good to see you again. Right next to me on the other side, Robert Fleischman and Podcast Rock City. A couple tables down, Tom Shannon and Kiss My Wax. Across from me, UC Replicas, which hopefully means Little Andrew. Little Andrew. So looking forward to that. I'm going to be talking about that every episode I do before I go to Indy. So, all right. I think that's it for today. Gentlemen, as always, thank you for joining me. Everyone out there, what would you change in 1978? Would you get rid of Double Platinum? Would you get rid of the movie? Would you get rid of the solo albums? What would you change? How would you change it in order to make 1979 an even better year for the band than it actually turned out to be? So for now, from Mark, from Ken, from Lonnie, and myself, we thank you for listening, and we'll see you wherever you listen to us. Bye for now. I hate dolls. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we've broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.